When Shedeur Sanders stepped up after the loss to Bears, he owned his performance without. Meanwhile, Kevin Stefanski danced around the truth. Pressed about the botched wristband communication, Stefanski offered vague, contradictory answers, at first calling it miscommunication, then suggesting the card had simply fallen out. But Sanders' version didn't match. And when asked whether holding back Sanders from starting sooner was a mistake, Stefanski avoided the question entirely. This wasn't just about poor in-game decisions. It was about a leader refusing to be accountable when it mattered most.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The implications are bigger than one game. Stefanski's refusal to stand by his players and his actions reveals a deeper issue in Cleveland. Sanders is showing the grit and leadership the franchise desperately needs, while his coach is displaying patterns of blame shifting and self-preservation. If Sanders is to grow into the quarterback the Browns need, he can't do it under a coach who treats accountability like a threat. The contrast between player and coach couldn't be clearer, and the team's future may hinge on which of them the front office decides to trust. Kevin Stefanski might have thought he was playing a long game, strategically maneuvering behind closed doors, preserving his image, letting the rookie take the heat. But when Shedeur Sanders finally got a shot and everything fell apart on national television, what was supposed to be a quiet coaching decision became a public unraveling. The headlines weren't about the loss. They were about sabotage. And now, the questions aren't just about play calling or game management. They're about integrity. Because you don't get to brush off a wristband malfunction like it's nothing, especially when that malfunction could be the reason your quarterback couldn't execute plays properly in the most important game of his career so far. And you definitely don't get to stay vague when your own player comes forward and says the card literally fell out. That's not a communication error. That's a breakdown that should have been caught before kickoff. But instead of owning the mistake, Stefanski gave the kind of answer that only made things worse. The kind that doesn't clarify anything. The kind that sounds rehearsed. The kind that reeks of someone protecting themselves instead of protecting their team. And that's exactly what this entire controversy has become. A slow, deliberate campaign to shift blame away from the head coach and onto anyone else, even if it means jeopardizing the development of one of the most promising young quarterbacks in the league. And let's not forget, this wasn't just a random incident. It came after weeks of fans asking the same question. Why wasn't Sanders starting? Why was he on the bench while the team struggled to find momentum? Stefanski never gave a clear answer. Just more deflection, more corporate speak, more delay. Then, when Sanders finally does start, Stefanski gives him a flawed setup and then pretends everything went fine until media forces him to respond. That's not leadership. That's deflection. And it's a pattern now. Because when asked after the game whether he regretted not starting Sanders earlier, Stefanski couldn't even give a straight answer. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just avoided. Again. And that's when it all started clicking for people. The wristband malfunction wasn't just unfortunate. It was symbolic. It was a perfect representation of how Stefanski has been handling Sanders' development all season. Sloppy, incomplete, and riddled with excuses. And instead of admitting that, he's hoping no one notices. But people have noticed. Loudly. Because Sanders, he's done everything right. He's handled every press conference with maturity. He's taken accountability. He hasn't thrown teammates under the bus. He hasn't blamed anyone. He's kept his head down and done the work, even when the deck was clearly stacked against him. And that contrast is one guy is deflecting. The other is owning up. One guy is trying to rewrite the story. The other is just trying to do his job. One guy is being protected by vague narratives. The other is being left exposed to fail. This isn't just about bad coaching. It's about a coach prioritizing his own survival over the growth of a rookie quarterback. And now, that's not just speculation. It's playing out in front of everyone. And the ripple effects? They're everywhere. From bizarre in-game decisions, like opting for two-point conversions instead of tying with field goals, to questionable clock management, Stefanski has made decision after decision that's hard to justify. And in each case, when things go wrong, it's never his fault. There's always an explanation. Or worse, a total refusal to give one. And that strategy might work for a little while, but not when your young QB is out there getting torn apart by the media for something that wasn't even his fault. Let's be honest. Sending Sanders into that Bears game without fully functional communication tools is either gross incompetence or deliberate sabotage. There's no in-between. And either option reflects terribly on Stefanski. Because if it was an honest mistake, where's the accountability? Where's the ownership? Why didn't he say, "That's on me. We failed him"? Why did it take Sanders publicly explaining the malfunction for us to even know what happened? And if it wasn't a mistake, if this was about slowing down Sanders, controlling the narrative, or protecting earlier decisions, then this is a whole different kind of problem. It's the kind of problem that destroys locker rooms. Because NFL players aren't blind. They see who's being protected and who's being blamed. And when your teammates start believing that your head coach is sabotaging a rookie QB to preserve his own reputation, that's not something you bounce back from. And now, with Stefanski's future reportedly hanging in the balance, the stakes couldn't be higher. Browns owner Jimmy Haslam has yet to make a clear decision. And that indecision is making everything worse. Because every game that goes by without accountability is another game where Sanders is being asked to perform in chaos. Every press conference without answers is another day of instability. And every vague coaching response is another brick in a wall of distrust that's now impossible to ignore. What's so frustrating is that this team doesn't have a talent problem. They have a leadership problem. And leadership problems don't fix themselves. There's no game plan, no film study, no sideline adjustment that can correct a culture built on avoidance. And until someone in the organization steps in and says, "Enough," that culture will keep dragging down players who are doing everything right. Players like Sanders, who have the talent, mindset, and maturity to be something special, if they're given a real chance. But right now, that chance is being threatened by a coach who can't even admit when he's wrong. And if the Browns let that continue, they're not just risking this season. They're risking the future of the franchise. Because quarterbacks like Sanders don't come around often. You don't get many chances to develop a young player with this level of resilience, accountability, and leadership. But those qualities don't grow in isolation. They need support. They need a system that's designed to elevate, not deflect. They need a coach who's more focused on building trust than building excuses. And that's just not what Stefanski is offering right now. He's offering confusion, vague answers, a warped sense of priorities, and a pattern of decision-making that looks a lot more like self-preservation than coaching. So what happens now? Does ownership step in and take control of the narrative before Stefanski completely tanks the future of their rookie quarterback? Or do they continue pretending this is just a rough patch, hoping it all magically resolves itself? Because there's no more gray area. The damage has been done. The patterns are clear. The coach has been exposed. And the longer they wait to make a decision, the harder it's going to be to undo what's already in motion. You can't build a winning franchise on a foundation of excuses. You can't develop a quarterback in a climate of distrust. And you can't protect the future while clinging to a coach who's stuck in the past. Let us know what you think. Was this just another game gone wrong, or are we witnessing something deeper, something intentional? Is Stefanski just in over his head, or is this part of a larger pattern of self-serving leadership? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this if you're ready for real accountability in Cleveland, like if you've had enough of the spin. And subscribe if you want the full truth behind the headlines, because we'll be following this one all the way through. Stefanski might be trying to control the narrative, but the receipts are already out there, and they're not going away. At this point, the silence from the Browns front office is louder than anything Kevin Stefanski has said all season. And that's saying something, because he's had plenty of chances to say the right thing, to step up, to show even the smallest trace of accountability. But each time he's asked a direct question about Shedeur Sanders, whether it's about the delayed start, the wristband issue, or the disastrous game management, he shrinks. It's all deflection, all smoke and mirrors. And that's exactly why fans and analysts aren't letting this go. Because this feels deliberate now. Not just a bad coaching call, but a sustained pattern of decisions designed to keep Sanders boxed in, underprepared, and easy to scapegoat. You don't give your rookie quarterback a broken wristband in his first meaningful start, then casually call it a communication issue. You don't hold him on the bench for weeks, then refuse to say whether that was a mistake, especially when he's the only one acting like an adult in the room. And you don't throw a 21-year-old out there without a full support system, then vanish when the media comes calling for explanations, unless you're hiding something. And let's be honest, if Stefanski had come out after that game and said, "We messed up, we should have had Sanders better prepared. That wristband failure is 100% on us," this would be a very different conversation. But he didn't. Instead, he gave that same tired, rehearsed look he gives whenever he's pressed. The one where he pretends not to hear the question clearly. The one where he half nods, says something about execution or evaluating everything, and then wraps it up before anyone can press further. That's not leadership. That's PR damage control. And if you're Shedeur Sanders, how do you trust a coach who refuses to protect you when it counts? This is a quarterback who handled everything with class, from being benched early in the season without explanation to dealing with a very public performance setback that wasn't even his fault. Sanders has said all the right things. He hasn't shifted blame. He hasn't criticized the staff. He's focused on growth, stayed professional, and maintained a level of maturity that frankly puts Stefanski to shame. That's not just impressive. That's rare. And that's exactly the kind of player you build around. But Stefanski, he's doing the opposite. He's letting the pressure roll downhill. He's letting the headlines pile on Sanders while staying just distant enough to avoid the blowback. It's not hard to see what's happening. Stefanski's coaching seat is already warming up. And instead of leaning into development and showing leadership, he's trying to rewrite the timeline. If Sanders struggles, he gets to say he wasn't ready. If Sanders succeeds, he gets to take credit for the timing. If anything goes wrong, miscommunication. If anything goes right, that's the system working. It's a playbook built on ambiguity, and Sanders is the one getting trapped in the margins. And while all this is happening, the Browns' offense has become a slow-motion car crash. Baffling red zone decisions, clock management failures, questionable two-point conversion calls. It's a catalog of errors that would get most coaches fired on the spot. But Stefanski continues to skate by, somehow convincing everyone that the process is working. Newsflash, it's not. The results speak for themselves. And the fact that his biggest concern seems to be avoiding direct answers about a wristband malfunction during a critical start, that tells you everything you need to know. There's no scenario where a young quarterback like Sanders thrives under a coach who won't go to bat for him. The NFL is ruthless enough. Rookies need guidance, not gaslighting. They need structure, not sabotage. And when the people at the top start prioritizing narrative over development, it doesn't just slow down growth, it breaks trust. And the longer this continues, the harder it's going to be to undo. Let's talk about the message this sends to the rest of the team. If you're in that locker room, watching this unfold, you can't ignore what's happening. You see Stefanski dodging questions. You see Sanders handling the pressure alone. You see the rookie being set up to take the fall, while the head coach plays the long game with the media. That kills morale. It creates division. It makes everyone feel like they're one bad play away from being next in line for the blame. And that's not just a Sanders problem. That's a team problem. That kind of culture seeps into everything. Preparation, confidence, chemistry. It all suffers when players feel like they're being managed, not supported. The Browns can't afford that. Not now. Not with the amount of young talent they're sitting on. And certainly not with a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, who's already proven he has the tools, the mindset, and the leadership skills to be the face of the franchise. But you can't build around someone while simultaneously undercutting them. You can't treat development like a political game and expect to come out clean. The NFL is brutal. What Sanders is going through right now, most young quarterbacks never recover from it. Not because of the loss, not because of the stats, but because of the psychological toll of being mismanaged in front of the world, and then left to answer for alone. It takes an unbelievable amount of resolve to get through that and still want to lead the same team. And the fact that Sanders is still showing up, still pushing forward, still giving measured, thoughtful interviews, that says everything. He's doing his part. More than that, actually, but the people around him aren't. And the Browns have to decide right now. Do they want to invest in Sanders for real? Or are they going to keep pretending that the Stefanski situation is fixable when all the signs say otherwise? The longer they wait, the more damage is done, not just to Sanders' growth, but to the culture of the team, the integrity of the locker room, the trust between players and leadership. Because once you lose that trust, you can't coach your way out of it. You can't spin your way out of it. You can't communication issue your way out of it. You have to start over. And maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe Stefanski's time has run out. Not just because of the losses, but because of what those losses reveal. A coach more interested in image management than player development. What's happening in Cleveland right now isn't just dysfunction. It's calculated. It's layered. And if you've been paying attention, it's impossible to unsee. Kevin Stefanski isn't just fumbling play calls or struggling with fourth down conversions. That would almost be forgivable in a high-pressure league. What he's doing is far more damaging. He's rewriting the story as it's happening, shifting the weight of every failure onto his rookie quarterback while stepping just far enough back to stay clean. And yet Shedeur Sanders keeps showing up. He shows up in press conferences, calm and accountable. He shows up on the field, still trying to lead, still playing through confusion, inconsistency, and a system that looks more interested in exposing him than elevating him. He shows up with maturity, composure, and a professionalism you'd expect from a 10-year veteran. Not a kid trying to earn his stripes in a league that eats young quarterbacks alive. But how long can one player carry all of that without real support? Because when Stefanski walked into that post-game presser and gave that now infamous shoulder shrug over the wristband situation, he made one thing very clear. Shedeur Sanders is on his own. Let's not pretend this was a one-off equipment issue. Sanders said the card fell out. That's basic preparation. That's something you check before the game, before every snap, before you put your quarterback in front of millions and say, go lead this team. It's not a miscommunication. It's a coaching failure, period. And it's not the first one. This entire season has been a case study in how not to manage a rookie quarterback. Start with a delayed debut. Why wait so long to play Sanders if he was clearly capable? Stefanski never gave a straight answer. Then when he did play, he was set up to fail. No rhythm, no in-game support, and no contingency plan for a failed wristband. The very tool used to execute plays. That's not coaching. That's negligence. And when the heat came, Stefanski backed away, letting the noise fall squarely on Sanders. You can feel it in the energy around the team. Players are frustrated. Fans are fed up. And Sanders? He's still being asked to navigate a narrative designed to chip away at his confidence, to frame him as not ready, when the truth is, he's never been given a fair platform. Stefanski had a chance to change that. He had the opportunity to stand next to Sanders, not behind him. But every decision, from the play calls to the wristband to the press room, has said the opposite. Stefanski isn't trying to build around Sanders. He's trying to protect himself from Sanders being better than he expected. Because if Sanders had started earlier and succeeded, that calls Stefanski's judgment into question. That makes him look like the guy who misread his own roster, who sat on a potential star for weeks while the team sputtered. So instead, he delays the start. Then when Sanders finally plays, he's undermined by preventable errors. And when things unravel, Stefanski offers just enough ambiguity to keep himself out of it. It's not just bad optics. It's tactical. And now we're watching it bleed into everything. 2-point conversion calls that don't make sense. Clock decisions that blow up drives. Refusals to adjust mid-game when it's clear the scheme isn't working. It's a coaching style that doesn't just feel defensive. It is defensive. Stefanski is coaching like someone who's been fighting off accountability for so long. He's forgotten how to just lead. And the worst part? This could cost Shedeur Sanders everything. Because public perception matters. If you're a young quarterback and you're labeled as not ready, that sticks. If you're seen as inconsistent, people stop asking why. If your coach doesn't speak up for you, no one else will. And then suddenly you're the problem. Not the system. Not the coaching. You. That's the trap Stefanski has quietly set. And it's why the situation is so dangerous. Not just for this season, but for Sanders' career. Now, let's be real. Shedeur Sanders is not the kind of player who's going to fold. If anything, he's shown more backbone in a few months than most quarterbacks show in years. But why should he have to fight this hard this early? Why is the burden of leadership falling entirely on him while Stefanski continues to sidestep the fallout of his decisions? And where is ownership in all of this? Jimmy Haslam's silence is starting to sound like consent. When a coach consistently evades accountability, sabotages development, and still gets to run the team, that's not just a coaching issue. That's a leadership failure at the highest level. Because there's a point where indecision is a decision. And the longer Haslam waits to address this, the more obvious it becomes that the Browns are willing to sacrifice Sanders' growth to protect an unstable coaching regime. They can try to spin it however they want. But here's the truth. Shedeur Sanders walked into a broken culture and has somehow become the most stable part of it. That should terrify people. And if the Browns aren't willing to build around that kind of leadership, someone else will be, because quarterbacks like Sanders don't come along often. And if Cleveland fumbles this opportunity, it won't just be another rebuild. It'll be a reputation killer. So now it's up to the fans, the media, and the people who actually care about this team's future to ask the real questions. Why is Kevin Stefanski still being protected? Why hasn't ownership addressed the growing dysfunction? Why is a 21-year-old quarterback being held to a higher standard of accountability than the man paid to lead him? And most importantly, what happens if nothing changes? Because if Stefanski stays, if this pattern continues, it won't just be Sanders who suffers. The Browns will lose more than games. They'll lose credibility. And they'll lose the trust of a fan base that's already watched too many quarterbacks be wasted in systems that were never built to support them. So let's talk about it. Are you buying into Stefanski's excuses? Or are you done giving him the benefit of the doubt? Is Sanders being sabotaged? Or is this just more bad coaching in a league full of it? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like if you're tired of the spin. Share this with someone who still thinks the problem is just rookie nerves. And make sure you're subscribed. Because the Browns' chaos isn't slowing down anytime soon, and the truth, it's only getting louder.